The Drug Enforcement Administration seized last year contained a deadly amount of fentanyl, and now there's a new drug potentially more potent than fentanyl, and it's hitting the Virginia streets.
Have you ever imagined that the most dangerous enemy could be hiding right at the heart of the United States defense system? One ordinary morning at the Pentagon turned into a nightmare when agents discovered nearly 4 kilograms of contraband hidden inside the office of a senior advisor. But the truly terrifying part wasn't the seized material itself, it was the identity of those behind it. Not distant criminals, but trusted officials wearing the most privileged badges. This incident exposed a vast octopus-like network that had been silently manipulating 9 federal agencies for years. Join me as we dive deep into these classified files to reveal the horrifying extent of infiltration no one dared believe possible. Exactly 6 hours and 12 minutes in the morning in Arlington, Virginia. Inside the Pentagon, a senior advisor has been arrested. The seized evidence includes 3.88 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a secret steel compartment. This is a serious infiltration by cartels right into the very heart of United States defense. The operation stretched from Virginia to 17 other major cities, becoming the most serious internal security breach in American history. But the real shock is not the amount of drugs seized, but where those badges were discovered not only on the smugglers, but on Pentagon employees, federal coordinators, and state officials who hold full security clearance. The very people entrusted with protecting America have been quietly sabotaging it from within. To find out just how deep the infiltration goes, hit like and follow right now, because what's about to be revealed is something every citizen needs to hear. Early at 6 hours, 12 minutes in the morning in Arlington, Virginia, what began as a routine compliance check in the office of the Secretary of Defense suddenly turned into an earth-shaking scandal. Behind the casing of an ordinary printer, agents discovered a secret steel compartment containing 3.88 kilograms of pure cocaine, $74,000 in cash, and a fully loaded Sig Sauer P-320 right at the desk of Senior Policy Advisor Michael R. Hanford, the man who controls critical military logistics. When the handcuffs clicked, Hanford stayed absolutely silent, not a single word of defense. Hours later at Quantico, his encrypted laptop was cracked open, exposing a hidden drug trafficking network bought off personnel and safe houses nestled in quiet residential neighborhoods. What started as a routine inspection has laid bare a grave fracture in America's national security system. They were disguised as routine equipment transfers, slipped into legitimate cargo manifests, and approved with Hanford's digital signature. Every single shipment proved that the cartels had learned how to hide inside the government's own system. The second folder was even worse. It was a spreadsheet listing 37 federal and state employees, each one marked as reliable. Some worked in logistics, others in procurement. A few held seemingly harmless administrative roles until cross-checks revealed they had access to transportation databases, federal seals, or warehouse schedules. The third folder exposed the full depth of the cartel plan. 14 suburban houses spread across Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina were rented under clean identities. On paper, they were homes for families, retirees, or college students. In reality, they were covers for CJNG members hiding in plain sight among quiet neighborhoods. Inside the Pentagon, generals sat in stunned silence as the briefing laid it out. This was not just a few corrupt individuals, but a structural vulnerability, a network rooted deep inside agencies once thought untouchable. For the first time in decades, the Federal Command Center shifted to its highest alert level, the one reserved for nation-state enemies. Alerts went out everywhere, units redeployed, surveillance teams ran at full capacity. No one knew how far the penetration really went. Only one thing was certain: if CJNG could reach inside the Pentagon, no place was safe anymore. By 5 o'clock the following morning, the United States was no longer dealing with one suspicious employee or a hidden drawer. They were facing an active armed network embedded across multiple states. Federal command centers, still combing through the files from Hanford's laptop, issued a single coordinated order: hit every target at once. Within minutes, the teams moved. Virginia, the first breach point. In a quiet suburb outside Arlington, a two-story house sat dark and silent. The neighbors believed a young couple lived there, but the surveillance teams already knew the truth. Thermal imaging showed 5 adult males inside, awake and moving. At 5 hours, 3 minutes in the morning, an FBI assault team moved across the yard. The front door exploded inward. Gunfire erupted instantly from the staircase as cartel gunmen opened up with short-barreled rifles. Agents poured in behind the kitchen island, returning fire in tight, controlled bursts. Glass-shattered smoke filled the hallway. In under 1 minute, 2 suspects were neutralized, and the rest threw up their hands under the glare of weapon lights. Inside the pantry, agents uncovered 28 kilograms of methamphetamine and stacks of forged military shipping labels, proof that the house was an active logistics cell. In Houston, steel and gunfire roared. While Virginia was still clearing the scene, a tactical MRAP armored vehicle smashed through a steel warehouse door on the outskirts of Houston. Sparks flew as the armored vehicle punched through the garage door. Cartel gunmen opened fire from behind stacked engine blocks, rounds slamming into steel and concrete with deafening clangs. Agents returned precise fire, advancing in tight formation. The gunfight lasted less than 4 minutes, but it was brutal. Flashbangs, ricochets, shouts in Spanish, and the thunder of boots on the catwalk. When it was over, agents counted 118 rifles, 7 machine guns, and 42 kilograms of cocaine packed inside crates disguised as auto parts. In the remote California desert, 3 CJNG gunmen frantically floored their black SUV, kicking up blinding clouds of dust. But the drone clung tight and guided a roaring DHS helicopter that swooped low and forced them to stop. The suspects bolted into the scorching sand, only to be instantly tackled by tactical teams without a single shot fired. At the same hour in Norfolk Port, 6 containers bearing perfect counterfeit federal seals were stopped just minutes from slipping through. Inside, chemical precursors, cocaine and cash destined for the entire East Coast. When the sun rose, the numbers sent chills down every spine: 2.1 tons of narcotics, 221 firearms, and 58 arrests. Yet nobody celebrated. The seized evidence only confirmed the nightmare. This was merely one tiny branch of a colossal, deeply rooted network that is nowhere near finished. By the time the raids ended and the first light swept across the East Coast, federal analysts were staring at a far darker truth. The evidence pulled from Virginia, Houston, California, and Norfolk didn't just confirm cartel activity. It mapped out an entire shadow system operating beneath the very infrastructure of the United States. And that system was far more sophisticated than any agent had expected when this investigation began. The breakthrough came in Boston, inside an unremarkable federal building where intelligence teams had spent the night cross-referencing documents seized in the raids. CJNG managed to penetrate the Pentagon. How many other federal agencies do you think they've already compromised from inside this network? At 7 hours 40 minutes in the morning, one analyst pushed back from the desk and stared at a cluster pattern taking shape on the screen. 3 separate corridors, moving weapons, narcotics, and cash, each corridor flowing through legitimate American businesses with no criminal records and no obvious vulnerabilities. The map kept expanding node by node until the pattern looked less like a smuggling route and more like a carefully built parallel infrastructure hidden beneath reality. The weapons corridor ran through trucking companies in Texas and Tennessee. These companies had spotless safety records, clean audits, and regular contracts, delivering machine parts to military bases. But the invoices seized in Houston revealed that identical part numbers were being used to mask illegal shipments. Every crate had a twin one legitimate load riding alongside one hidden load, a perfect mirror. The narcotics corridor stretched up the East Coast using suburban warehouses, small freight forwarders, and even a veterinary supply distributor to move meth and cocaine disguised as medical chemicals. In Norfolk, investigators traced the forged federal seals back to a retired procurement specialist living quietly in Delaware. His signature had been lifted and reused on dozens of shipments he never even touched. The financial corridor was the most dangerous of all. It flowed through nail salons, corner grocery stores, auto repair shops, and even federal purchasing channels. Each business generated cash flow that looked perfectly normal until analysts overlaid the data with offshore wire transfers. Suddenly, dormant connections to Mexico, Guatemala, and Colombia lit up across the map. As agents grasped the full scope of the network, panic began rippling through federal offices. This wasn't cartel operatives sneaking across the border anymore.
Evidence later recovered showed they had been receiving payments routed through one of those quiet corner groceries flagged in the financial corridor. Across the country, federal leadership realized a devastating truth. CJNG had not infiltrated a single office. They had infiltrated 9 federal agencies and dozens of state offices all at once. The question was no longer how the breach started. The question was how far it still reached. As the scale of the penetration became undeniable, the federal government entered a state rarely seen outside of wartime. High-ranking officials moved quietly between secure rooms, clutching files typically reserved for foreign threats. But this time, the enemy was sitting right behind a familiar ID badge. Before noon, the investigation had blown open a series of federal offices, employees missing workstations, wiped clean documents burned off schedule. Outwardly chaotic, it was in reality an organized cleanup operation by those on the inside. From Charlotte to Denver, traces of flight sabotage and destruction appeared simultaneously, proving that the walls were closing in and the internal spies knew their time was running out. In Tampa, a senior technician barricaded himself, destroying encryption equipment and downloading classified data, only to be apprehended after 12 minutes. He shouted that his accomplices were cleaning up loose ends everywhere. Simultaneously, a wave of employees disappeared, documents were burned to ashes, systems were wiped clean, and a flood of resignations and leave requests poured in. This was no longer isolated corruption, but an organized internal collapse. Trust evaporated as the enemy had been parasitizing within the very national security agencies. By 9:15 a.m. on Friday, the leaders of the FBI, DHS, DOJ, DOD, ICE, ATF, and state agencies met secretly in Washington, confronting the chilling reality the enemy was deeply entrenched and designed to endure.
As FIRTF expanded, its operation teams of agents launched simultaneous raids across the United States. New Jersey seized a cache of counterfeit uniforms and ID cards. Phoenix dismantled a secret router transferring data to Mexico City and Seattle, raided a house registered to a deceased veteran containing a laptop connected directly to the defense procurement system along with drug distribution maps. Every location demonstrated meticulous planning and infiltration. When the final red dots appeared on the composite map in Washington, the entire analysis room fell silent. The network had penetrated dozens of state offices, 9 federal agencies, and hundreds of private contractors, turning the defense system itself into a supply pipeline for the CJNG.
The recent operation to dismantle the CJNG network that infiltrated the U.S. government was far more than a routine crime crackdown. It was a head-on confrontation with the gravest national security threat since the Cold War.
The scale and sophistication left everyone involved stunned. The Mexican cartel had turned hundreds of federal employees, defense contractors, and state officials into willing links in a supply chain for drugs and dirty money, exploiting America's own trust and bureaucratic procedures as the perfect shield. Early successes were striking: more than 2 tons of narcotics seized, hundreds of firearms recovered, dozens of containers intercepted, and countless insiders either exposed or fleeing in panic. However, the very evidence seized turned that victory bitterly hollow. Each container, each laptop, each counterfeit ID was merely the visible tip of a colossal underground structure engineered to regenerate even when entire chains of operatives were severed. The most terrifying part was not the volume of drugs or cash, but the fact that trust in the system had been hollowed out from within. This operation proved that America's true borders no longer run along the Rio Grande or the Pacific, but behind security badges and federal seals. Without radical reform of hiring, oversight, and clearance procedures, today's dramatic raids, no matter how spectacular, are nothing more than pruning branches while the root remains untouched. The real war has only just begun. The fight against the Jalisco Nueva Generación CJNG cartel's infiltration of the U.S. defense system, as described in this story, is a stark reminder of the vulnerability of internal security. From the discovery of cocaine and weapons hidden in the Pentagon to the coordinated raids across the United States, the incident revealed the sophistication of an organized crime network that exploited trust and bureaucratic processes to infiltrate 9 federal agencies and dozens of state offices. What is most troubling is not the amount of drugs or weapons seized, more than 2 tons of narcotics and hundreds of guns, but the loss of confidence in the nation's defense system. Highly authorized personnel, from senior advisors to logistics specialists, have become links in the criminal supply chain, using legitimate businesses as fronts for illegal activity. This fight underscores the urgent need for radical reform, far stronger background checks, much stricter financial oversight, and tighter collaboration among agencies such as the FBI, DHS, and DOJ to prevent any repeat of this nightmare. Yet the initial victories are only the surface. The real root of the problem lies in corruption and the abuse of power, a cancer that demands action not just from government, but from the vigilance of every single citizen. By raising community awareness and pushing for genuine transparency, the United States can rebuild far tougher protective barriers, transforming this painful lesson into the driving force behind a truly resilient national security system. Ultimately, the story is a powerful reminder that keeping the nation safe is not solely the government's duty. It is a shared mission that requires unity and determination to confront threats that hide in plain sight right within our own society. The greatest lesson from all of this isn't the scale of the arrests, it's the reminder that vigilance belongs to every single citizen. The danger doesn't always come from across the border or out of the shadows, it hides inside the most familiar structures of all. The cartels exploited trust and legitimate cover. Quiet suburban homes, unassuming small businesses to build their shadow network. That means we can never again blindly trust something just because it looks normal. Protecting our community starts with staying alert, watching closely, and asking reasonable questions about anything that feels off in the world around us. This case is a profound wake-up call for the entire nation. The enemy didn't kick down the door, they walked right through it quietly, using our own trust as their weapon. Yet the coordinated operations we just witnessed prove the raw power of unity and resilience when agencies stand together to fight a threat that hides in plain sight. The war against this infiltration is far from over. How deep do you think this network has already spread, and what should the government do next to seal the trust vulnerabilities once and for all? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe So stories like this keep reaching the people who need to hear them.